We've been going through a series, The Pathway to Peace, a way in which we find serenity deep within by looking at the Serenity Prayer. The Serenity Prayer is one that we don't really know who wrote it. There are different people who took it. If you know anybody who is in any recovery communities, they actually start with this prayer, because most of the recovery communities actually are more of a spiritual formation guide as well. And so it helps to focus on things in which we probably all have things that we need to recover from, for we all have hurts and habits and hang-ups that sort of keep us back and hold us where we are. So I'd like to start today, if you would join with me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So we first started with seeing that this serenity, this peace that we get inside, is not one that we can work for, but rather it's one that God grants to us. We then realize that there are things in life that no matter what and no matter how, we just can't change them. We may want them changed, but they're not going to be changed. And people complain even when nothing's going to happen, and we just need to know that sometimes there's nothing that we can do. We can change ourselves, but not anyone else, or sometimes anything else. And so today we're going to be looking at what it means to have the courage to change the things that we actually can change. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus said, "Why do you see the splinter that's in your brother's or sister's eye and don't notice the log in your own?" This is the reverse of the Serenity Prayer. This is, why do you try to change the things you cannot change and ignore the things that you can? Because I think Jesus was pointing out something to us. That changing what we can change is not always our first choice. It's so much easier to look at those other things outside of ourselves and go, okay, now what can everybody else change so that I can stay the same? How can other people behave in different ways so that my behavior will not respond to what somebody else is doing? How can I adjust and move and look at maybe what I can change? You know, sometimes, I don't know, do you ever like to complain? You know, even about things we know we can't change. You know, it's cold outside, and the wind is blowing. Yep. Guess what? It's November in Pennsylvania. We're not going to change it. You know, or you might go somewhere and like to a ballpark or to some other venue, and they're charging $7 or $3 for a hot dog. There's an inside joke there, if you didn't know. And we just complain. Right? You just sit there and you're like, I can't believe somebody is charging that much for whatever. Well, guess what? You're not going to change that. What you can change is your attitude. But that, I don't want to do that. I don't want to change that. Everybody else changed so that I can remain the same. And that's why I think Jesus was saying, why are you worrying about everybody else? Just stop it. If it's not about you, if it's not about what you can do, then just let it go. Stop making it be your first choice. Because in the letter of Timothy, we heard that God doesn't give us a spirit that is timid. See, Timothy was mentored by Paul. And Paul is reminding Timothy of the faith that he had. The faith that he had when he knew he had when Paul laid his hands on him. He reminded him of his mother and his grandmother and the faith they had and how he's grown up. And Timothy was now starting not to do what he knew he needed to do. He had to change and do things differently, and he wasn't really ready, and so he was starting to be timid. And Paul was saying, look, that's not who God created you to be. See, changing the things we can change actually takes courage. Sometimes people think that if you change yourself, it's a weakness. You're admitting that there is something within you that is weak, and so you need to change it. No. Changing things takes courage because it admits what it is you really need to change. Whether it's your attitude, whether it's your behaviors, whether it's your responses, that takes a whole lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage when someone is yelling at you and you don't think you deserve to be yelled at, and all of a sudden you want to respond in the most vehement ways. Ever been there? Somebody says something and it just sets you off, and by golly, you're ready. You know, it takes courage to go, wait, hold on. What can I change? See, because we have language that's wrong. See, we have language of, well, why is so-and-so doing to make me angry? Well, I'm going to tell you something. And it may be hard for some of you to grasp. Nobody else can make you angry. You allow yourself to become angry. And you may sit there, and I understand, you go, no, that's not the case, because when such and such happens, I just get angry. That may be true, but you can't control others or their responses. You can only control your own response, and that takes courage to step back and to go, count for a few seconds, breathe, and wonder why is that you are getting so angry over what other people do. It's not easy. I remember years ago having a conversation with someone, and they said, you know, you are wrong, Pastor. There are things that everybody gets angry about. I was like, oh, all right, I'm interested. What is it that you think everybody gets angry about? Everybody gets angry when someone cuts them off in traffic. There is no way that people can't get angry about that. I'm like, well, I'm not pleased, but I don't really get angry. They're like, what do you mean? How can you not? I mean, and boy, you could tell the visceral nature just comes out. Do you ever feel that? You know, even just thinking about a topic just brings something up within you. And he's just like, I'm like, no, they're going to do what they do. I just know I have to hit the brakes so I don't get hit. That's what I know. It takes courage to be able to take that step back. But it's not just anger that we feel. Sometimes it's disappointment, frustration, hopelessness, loss. See, it takes courage to step back and examine where these feelings come from. And God didn't give us a spirit of being timid, because many times we carry stories that other people have told us that are not God's stories about ourselves. You know, not everybody in this world is nice. Did you know that? Did you know that not everybody in this world is uplifting? Did you know that? Do you know that some people enjoy, it seems, to put other people down, but usually it's because of their own insecurities, but that's a whole other story. Sometimes it can be parents who just say a word that they don't even realize just made you feel less than. Sometimes it can be a teacher saying something stupid like, I can't believe you would do something that dumb. There's no hope for you. Why do you even try? And then, as children, we take that in, and sometimes we carry it with us for a lifetime. And it takes courage to be able to face those things, to stand up to them, to be able to say, no, that is not the truth. God didn't give me the spirit to be timid, but rather one that is powerful, loving, and self-controlled. See, that's what God has given to us. He has given to us a spirit of power so that we may overcome those things that we can actually change, that we can actually respond in love, and that we can know how and when that we can be self-controlled. Because when we do those things, when we change things that we can change, it moves us from being a victim to being a victor. When we change those things we cannot change, when we change the things we can change, and let the things we cannot change go away, it allows us to stand on the rock that God has given to us and know that we have the power to overcome. Yes, we have the power to complain. But every complaint we have, not everyone, most complaints that we have actually are really an opportunity that God has put before us to respond with power and love and self-control. That is the power that God gives to us, and it takes courage to walk into that power. It takes courage to be able to say, you know what? I am responsible for what I do. And I'm going to take full responsibility for every action that I take. I'm not going to let anybody else dictate what I do. That is when we move in to being able to be a victor. When we are a victim, what we end up saying is, this is happening because. This is happening because. This is happening because. So what we end up doing in our lives is we end up then reacting to everything because we are the victim of what happens to us, rather than being the actors in life that God desires for us, that we can now move out in this victory that God has promised us. See, that's what happens when we allow ourselves to change the things we can change. Now, that can be personally inside, but it's also all the things that we can do together as a congregation. You know, when we look out in our communities, if we see things that are not the way we like them to be, guess what? We have the power to change them. Well, you might say, that just seems too big of a task. Maybe. But how do we know if we don't try? How do we know if we don't actually try to live out in that power of God? What happens if we actually believe that we can change the things that we don't believe are the way they're supposed to be? What if we believe that if we actually step out with the refuge, the hope, and love of Jesus Christ, that we won't start transforming the world as we say we will? Because when we step into victory mode, we stop looking at victim mode. Instead of saying, well, you know, things are the way they are because, I'm sure you can list them, right? Things are the way they are because we now have shopping on Sundays. Churches are declining now because people have other options to do. You know why we're doing so bad is because there are sports on Sunday mornings. All those things are victim modes. Victor mode stands up and says, all right, this is the way it is. Guess what? I'm not going to change any of that, but what can I change? What am I in control of? What can I do? How can I stand in the very power of God and do what it is that God is helping us all to do together? That is victory mode. That is being the victor. That is overcoming. That is allowing ourselves to change what we can change. So I want to ask you a few questions to sort of help dig into this in you. So usually why we don't change is because there's some fear inside of us that's holding us back. So where has fear been holding you back from changing what you can control? Now, I use the word fear, but there may be another emotional word that might be for you. Maybe it's hopelessness. Maybe it's meaninglessness. There might be another word that fear doesn't strike. And the Lord will give you that word. But what is it that's holding you back from changing what actually you can control? I want you to think about, what does courage look like for you in this season of life? Wherever you are, where is it that you're not stepping into the power, the love, and the self-discipline that the Spirit is giving to you, and that you just are not stepping out in courage? Because for different people in different phases of life, it will mean different things. For some people, it takes courage just to get up in the morning. And maybe that's in the season in life you are, and are you taking that courage? So for you, let the Spirit move within you and let you know, what does courage really look for you, like for you right now, where you are in your life? And then how can you rely on the Spirit's power, love, and self-discipline this week? In other words, where do you need help? Allow the Spirit to work within you, to guide you, to change those things that you can change, so you truly may live into what the Spirit has. So my challenge this week to you is this. Take one faithful step. Where fear has held you back from changing what you can change. Trusting that the Spirit who lives in you is stronger than the fear around you. This in itself will take courage. But I promise you, if you will do this, you will find that the Spirit's power is greater than the fear around you. That doesn't mean you still won't be afraid. Because remember, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is how we respond in a positive way in the midst of it. So I'm going to say this prayer on the screen. And feel free to pray with me in your own hearts and minds. Or there may be another prayer that the Lord gives you, and if so, please follow that one. God of courage and grace, thank you for giving me a spirit of power, love, and self-discipline. When fear rises, remind me that you are with me. Help me to act in faith, live with bold love, and change what I have the power to change. In Christ's name, amen.